Okay. Every single day, a silent horror kills more Americans than were killed on 9/11. Every single year, this silent horror kills about as many Americans that have been killed on battlefields and all the wars in U.S. history combined. This silent horror is abortion. This is the beginning of an article I found online on endofamericandream.com, and it caught my attention and made me really think about abortion. My whole life I've been pro-life. Growing up in church, that's what I've been taught, and life is important. And I believe life starts at conception. So today I want to explain why I believe abortion should be illegal. I'm going to talk about some facts and things you should know about abortion, complications, both short-term and long-term, and how it fits in today's world. So some facts. There have been 53 million abortions since 1973 when Roe versus Wade took effect. That accounts to about 1 million abortions a year, and it comes down to about 3,000 a day. That's 3,000 innocent lives a day being taken away. On the endofamericandream.com website, they also have an interview with the Planned Parenthood founder, Margaret Sanger. She is quoted saying, "The most merciful thing a family could do to one of its infant members is to kill it." And I think that's really dramatic and over the top, because it's an innocent life. They need you, and there are thousands of families every day wanting a baby who can't have kids. Also on the website, they said 86% of abortions are out of pure convenience. They just don't want to have to take care of a kid, so they abort it. On another website, womencenter.com, they said about half of the pregnancies in the U.S. end in abortion. It's 4 out of 10 pregnancies. When my family and I talk about abortion, the thing that always comes up is if you're a 15-year-old girl at the mall with your friends and you decide you want to get your ears pierced, you can't, because you have to have parental consent. Your parent has to be there with you. But if you are pregnant and you don't want your parents to find out, someone at school can take you to a clinic to have an abortion without your parents' consent. And all medical procedures come with complications. And so now I'm going to talk about some short-term complications that, even though they're short-term, they are very severe. So the most common is infection. Infections can last 3 days, but they can also be fatal. The most common thing that happens is they don't extract all of the parts of the baby. So if a limb or a skull is left in the womb, you come down with a very serious infection, and you have bleeding and cramping. And in most cases, they have to do a hysterectomy, which is where they take the uterus out completely. So from there, you can't get pregnant ever again. And the other short-term are bleeding, anesthetic complications, and death. Some long-term are becoming sterile. You have scar tissue built up, so you can't get pregnant, or you have to have a hysterectomy. And one common thing that happens is when they're doing the abortion, they clamp onto the uterus and pull that up as well. So you become sterile from it. You have an increased risk of breast cancer, and you have cervical incompetence, and that's where the cervix becomes weak from them tearing it open during the abortion. And when you do get pregnant again, you have miscarriages and premature births. And I know this is a very controversial topic, and it's always all over the news. And that brings me to how it affects today. I'm sure most people have heard of Kermit Gosnell. He's known as an abortion doctor. He was just convicted of 3 counts of murder of babies. They were born at 24 weeks, so they could survive outside of the mother's womb, and he severed their spine. Instead of trying to convince the parent to put it up for adoption, he killed them. He is going to be serving 2 back-to-back life sentences without parole. He was also convicted of an overdose death of a patient who was getting an abortion and has to serve 2.5 years to 5 years in prison. And he got convicted of the late-term abortions, which is after 24 weeks where the baby can survive outside of the womb. And I got all this from foxnews.com, which had a very detailed interview of everything that was going on and talked to lawyers and everybody about it. And today, it is legal for most people to get abortions up to 16 weeks, but in most states it's 12 weeks, so the first trimester. And people get offended when you get an abortion, a late-term abortion, even though at 12 weeks there is a heartbeat and the baby is a living thing. There are thousands of families every day who can't have kids that would love to adopt one of these babies that just get murdered every day. I was talking to Jasmine and Jennifer the other day about this quote that I found in the newspaper, and my parents threw it away, so it's not exactly what was said, but it said, if the woman wants to be pregnant, she has a baby growing inside her. She's happy, that baby has life. If she doesn't want to be pregnant, it's a fetus and it has no life. And it doesn't matter. She wants to get rid of it, it's a tumor. So I know everyone has their opinion on it, and I hope I don't offend anybody by my stance. This is just what I believe, and I hope that with this topic and what I told you about the facts and the complications and today's world, you will consider these things when this topic comes up. We have the chance to save millions of lives over something that we can prevent. And so I hope if you are ever in a situation like this, you will consider that little life that you created and make the best decision for you.
So Brooke, how about a few words?
I thought your attention device was good. You had a good thesis. You previewed the speech well, and you had good eye contact. I felt like the flow throughout the speech was well, and you didn't stumble very much. And you made it personal. How you talked about your family, how you guys talk about it, even though it's such a controversial topic.
All right, well, I think the statistics at the beginning are pretty dramatic, and that sets up the topic and the point of view that you have on it very clearly. I think you need to, if you're going to make a value argument, you need to tell us what the criteria is for evaluating this. I know that if you come from a perspective that sees this as life and equivocates abortion as murder, that your point of view will be clear and validated. And anybody who shares that point of view is going to feel the same way you do about those issues. So the question, though, is how do you persuade people who don't feel that way to do that? And I think you need to do a little bit more arguing on that. You need to convince us that there is a standard on which we can judge whether or not this is a life. There is a standard in which we can judge whether or not this is the right or the wrong thing to do. You seem to suggest that convenience is insufficient, and I think, again, anybody who agrees with you is going to say, well, yeah, we shouldn't be sweeping away a life based on the notion of convenience. But if people have their doubts about if they see it as a life, and if convenience involves, for instance, a life-changing decisions on the part of the mother or the family, that's going to give it a different context. And so you have to kind of make a stronger argument about those issues instead of taking those as presuppositions that everybody's going to share your point of view on that. I think you need to build a little bit more argument on that. I thought that you got, although there was a pretty good setup in the body of the speech, it didn't really feel like it's structured as well as it needs to be, and that we sort of run through a variety of issues. we've got the moral issue that you start with, and then we're talking about potential medical problems that women who get abortions could have. And I think that there's nothing wrong with making those arguments, but you do need to provide some data to go along with them. You say that these sorts of things are possible, and at one point you said, look, any kind of medical procedure's got risks associated with it. You're making that argument, and you're even talking about kids getting, they have to have permission to get their ears pierced, but they don't necessarily have to have permission to go get an abortion, and there's a risk that's going on there. Okay, but that's true, like you said, with any kind of medical condition. So the argument often gets made, so what are the risk factors involved with carrying out a pregnancy, for instance? And we're comparing risks involved in that. And you need to be able to show that the risks involved in having an abortion are more substantial and more problematic. And right here they sound kind of hypothetical, and I think that needs to be developed a little bit more. The point about the Gosnell Clinic, it's a horrible story, and I don't think it got covered nearly the way it should have been. We heard more about that woman in Arizona stabbing her boyfriend in the shower than we heard about all the horror stuff that was going on in that clinic there, and that definitely needed more attention. But I think you need to explain more that this is a clinic that catered primarily to these late-term kinds of abortions. And tell us what a late-term abortion really means. It's, you're taking a child, 24 weeks, well, what stage of development is that at? How long is that process? At one point it seems like you were suggesting that there are limits by certain states to abortions in the first trimester. Well, this is clearly at the end of a second trimester, so there's a substantial difference that's going on there. So why did the states have those restrictions? What are the whole points about it? And why is this going on in direct defiance of, I don't know if it's in defiance of the laws in Pennsylvania, but it's definitely, at variance with what a lot of people see as being a valid, if any abortion is valid, which you wouldn't agree with, but remember, you're trying to make an argument to people and trying to persuade them to move along. Well, then let's kick them in the teeth with this one and talk about why this is invalid, why this is you get them to take that first step, then taking the other steps will be a little bit easier instead of assuming that they're just going to share your point of view on that. The only thing I want to say about the delivery issue is, delivery issue, we're talking about the wrong subject here. The delivery issue on this is, to me, it sounded like you were rushing through the whole speech. It sounded like you were in a hurry and you're trying to, some of it might be energy, some of it's just your compassion about the subject that's driving you there, but you need to pace yourself a little bit, because I think it undermines your credibility when you are that pumped up and you're going through it. You don't sound like you are in control, you don't sound like you are relaxed and confident, you sound frenetic, and I don't think frenetic sells very well. All right, thank you.